Good morning, everyone.
Howdy. And here we are, the two apostates you just love to hate.
Oh my goodness. Why is it every time we watch one of these type of documentary shows, we always learn something that we never knew before?
Well, that's very true. Or at least never thought to research.
Yeah.
Even though Watchtower says, read your Bible every day, you might come across a word and you never think to research it. We never did. All we know is just a little bit of the story, and that's what we, talk about in service or in our little kingdom halls.
Well, I don't even remember reading any of this in the Bible. And I mean, I used to keep up with the Bible reading, and when you look up the scriptures, you're scratching your head, and you probably haven't thought much about it, and you probably didn't think to do some research on it.
Well, the only thing I remember about this story is that Leah was homely. It's the only thing I remember. Of course, Jacob had to work another 7 years to get Rachel because he was tricked into sleeping with the sister.
Yeah.
With the homely one.
But we were watching an episode of Naked Archaeology, season 3, and something came up to where someone wrote in and asked him about some Bible verses. And it's like, oh my goodness. So we started doing research. And I've actually been doing research. I haven't had much time because I'm helping with some things behind the scenes. But every little bit, when I have an extra few minutes, I would go do some research on this. And so we're going to share with you what we found, and we always recommend go do your own research, don't take our word for it, you don't have to believe us, just go do your own research on this because this was very interesting. Now, we also have the clip from that show of the Naked Archaeology that we will show towards the end. So stay tuned for what he says about this subject.
Yeah.
And it's about mandrakes, like the title says. All right.
And they're not to be confused with the mandarin duck.
First thing he thought of was that
Ducks.
breed of ducks.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
They're mandarin.
Now, there's only 2 scriptures that mention mandrakes. The Hebrew word is dudahim. It's a plant. And so I'm going to read these scriptures first. The first one is in Song of Solomon.
The book that's all about, sex.
Chapter 7, verse 13. Yeah, there's going to be some adult subject matter in here, so you probably don't want to let your young children watch it or listen to it. Song of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 13. Let's go up to the end of verse 12. There I shall give my expressions of endearment to you. The mandrakes themselves have given their fragrance, and by our entrance ways there are all sorts of the choicest fruits. So by this, you're probably thinking, mandrakes, what the heck are those?
Do you really think that anybody's going to think about that, dear? Because you don't think about those things. What the hell is a mandrakes?
Now, when you Google mandrakes, the first thing that comes up is the botanical information, like from the encyclopedia. And the botanical thing for mandrakes is just your basic, that it's in the family of nightshade, and it can be toxic in large quantities, but it's also known as an aphrodisiac.
Hey, guys, they have the same problems that we have today, only we take a blue pill, they took a plant.
So like I said, this research got real interesting real fast. So what I did is I went to Bible Study Tools dictionary and I put in mandrakes. Mandrakes, Hebrew, dudahim, love plants.
Love potion number 9.
Occurs only in Genesis 30, 14 through 16, and Canticles 7:13. Well, I just read the one in the Song of Solomon.
Song of Solomon, yep.
So I'm going to read a little bit of this from the New World Translation, because Mike's got some other translations here, for our discussion here. So Genesis 30. It actually starts in verse 14, so I'm going to read this part of it. Now Reuben went walking in the days of the wheat harvest and got to find mandrakes in the field. So he brought them to Leah, his mother. Now, some dictionaries and information and stuff says that at this time, Leah had already had several children, lots of children, and that she was infertile at the time. Okay? Like I said, don't take our word for it. You can go do your research. Some scholars say yes, some say no. So take it for what it is. Okay? So her son, Leah's son Reuben, found some mandrakes growing in the field. It grows kind of like a weed in Palestine. So he brought them to Leah, his mother. Then Rachel, like Mike just said, was her sister, and we know she was infertile at this time.
And she was also the favored woman between Leah and Rachel.
Yeah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Give me, please, some of your son's mandrakes." At this she said to her, "Is this a little thing your having taken my husband, with your now taking also my son's mandrakes?" So Rachel said, "For that reason he is going to lie down with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob, this is the husband, was coming from the field in the evening, Leah went on out to meet him and then said, "It is with me you are going to have relations, because I have hired you outright."
Hired? Hired your husband to have sex with you? just how homely was Leah?
Well, I mean, this makes him a gigolo. Or you have to bribe your husband?
Yeah.
Or did he have a little problem that we're going to be talking about later?
On the surface, Jehovah's Witnesses, that I think most Christians don't even want to try to sort through any of this.
I know. Like I said, this is an adult subject.
Yeah.
Okay. "I have hired you outright with my son's mandrakes." Accordingly, he lay down with her that night, and God heard and answered Leah, and she became pregnant, and in time bore to Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, "God has given me a hireling's wages, because I have given my maidservant to my husband." So she called his name Issachar. I mean, there's just so much in these few verses to research that it's like, what in the world is going on with all of this? And then it says, "And Leah became pregnant once more, and in time bore a sixth son to Jacob."
So the problem doesn't seem to be that she was infertile. Problem seems to be with Jacob. Unless you read a different translation. And then you might get something inserted that you don't even know about. So what I'm going to do is read that same set of scriptures from my complete Jewish Bible. And I'm only going to focus on verse 14. And it says, during the wheat harvest wheat harvest season, Reuben, now keep in mind they're using the more vernacular pronunciation of the name. So
the Hebrew name.
Yeah, Reuben went out and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." Now what's interesting, and I don't think the camera's going to pick it up, but I'm going to turn the Bible to it, and you will see that I have underlined some words right in this area. I'll let you kind of focus on that for just a moment. Inserted into the text is this, okay? "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes," insert, "so that I can be fertile." So not only was the mandrakes considered love potion number 9 for men, but it was also love potion number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 9 for women. Because see, the women also viewed this as a fertility plant also. So it didn't go just one direction, it went in both directions. Now you have to ask, when you read all of this together, and she had already produced 4 children for Jacob, then what had happened to her that she was no longer producing children? Was the problem really his or hers? Because in the complete Jewish Bible, it says it has Rachel saying to Leah, so that I can be fertile. But when you read everything in context, it becomes really confusing, because it's Leah that bears the 5th child, and it says nothing about Rachel being pregnant. There we go.
Yeah.
So it's a really confusing thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, the point we want to get across is this was viewed as a fertility cure. Homeopathic cure for infertility.
Yeah. It's another name for a fertility drug.
Yeah. So I'm going to go on with the definition here in the Bible Study Tools, because all of these are very interesting, because in this whole area, and it isn't just Palestine, it was a lot of the areas around here, including the Hittites, Canaanites. So, going on, it says, many interpretations have been given of this word Dudahim. It has been rendered violets, lilies, jasmines, truffles or mushrooms, flowers, citron, etc. The weight of authority is in favor of its being regarded as the Mandragora officinalis of botanists, tongue twisters here, a near relative of the nightshades, the apple of Sodom. These are some of the nicknames it was given, okay? The apple of Sodom and the potato plant. It possesses stimulating and narcotic properties.
Narcotic properties. Ooh.
The fruit of this plant resembles the potato apple in size and is of pale orange color. It has been called the love apple. The Arabs call it Satan's apple.
Imagine that.
It still grows near Jerusalem and in other parts of Palestine.
So just a really quick thought. If it was considered to be a narcotic, why wouldn't you want to control that part of the world if you are controlling, I don't know, perhaps a drug trade?
Well,
I'm just saying,
Yeah. All right. Okay, the Arabs call it devil's apple from its power to excite voluptuousness. Dr. Richardson's lecture on alcohol, 1881, tried some experiments with wine made from the root of mandrake and found it narcotic, causing sleep, so that the ancients used it as an anesthetic. Used in small quantities like opium, it excites the nerves and is a stimulant. Like I said, the research on this got real interesting.
drug trade? I'm sorry, I just keep going back to that because I look at the whole entire picture of why would you want to clear the promised land? Well, maybe it's because there's some, something to be made from a drug trade. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Especially if you have one type of drug that does so many things for people.
Sounds like a miracle plant to me.
Yeah, it's the Garden of Eden plant. It's the apple.
Yeah. Let's see. The fruit is called in Arabic Eid el-Jinn, the eggs of the jinn.
Ooh.
Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Arabic jinn, I just watched an episode of, my favorite show on the jinn. They were mischievous little spirits. We may also know them here in, the Western world as genies.
Genies.
They were like little spirits, little mischievous demon type. They could do good or bad depending on what they felt like that day. Okay? So this fruit of this mandrake was called the eggs of the jinn. They have a narcotic smell and sweetish taste, but are too poisonous to be used as food. That's why you can only use it in small amounts.
Small amounts.
They are still used in folklore medicine in Palestine. The plant was well known as an aphrodisiac by the ancients.
Okay, so let me
How
interrupt.
interesting.
Yeah, let me interrupt right here, because what she just finished reading is also brought out, not in so many words, in my Archaeological Study Bible. You go down to Genesis chapter 30, verse 14, and it just says this. This is all it says. And once again, it's put in the context of an infertile woman. It says, mandrakes are thought to induce pregnancy when eaten. So there again, it wasn't just viewed from the perspective of an aphrodisiac for men, it was also viewed from the perspective of being a plant that would stimulate the woman's interior to, I don't know, maybe produce an egg, produce fertility. So there again, I gotta ask, besides the point of being an aphrodisiac, a narcotic, it's a plant that you would really want to control, but at the same time, if these people knew the qualities of this plant from a botanist perspective, just how stupid were these people historically? They weren't that stupid. They were very, very well informed, weren't they, friends? They were very well informed, but the problem comes from this perspective. Is it really the God of Israel that's teaching them this, or are they getting this from somewhere else? Because remember, I've done videos in the past showing that it seems to me like the Israelites in this Bible have taken a little bit of ancient history here, laws from other cultures, and they just combined it into their own little state of existence, and oh, we have the true God of the universe. That's what Watchtower plays on, so you have to pay attention to the end, because once again, it appears very likely that they're borrowing this knowledge from another culture.
Yeah. And of course, you know, when I did my Google search, several Christian websites came up and they said, oh, well, this was a superstition that, you know, the true Christians back then, the true Israelites, you know, wouldn't want anything to do with, you know, even though some, you know, but this was a superstition. Well, obviously it was a well-known superstition. Now, I want to mention that, you know, I apologize. I started reading at Genesis 30, verse 14. I meant to go up to verse 9 and read that. It says, when Leah came to see that she had left off giving birth, she proceeded to take Zilpah, her maidservant, and to give her to Jacob as wife. So there it mentions that, you know, Leah had become infertile at this time, and she gave Jacob her maidservant.
So it's just a little more in that scripture that you really need to think about when you're reading this.
Yeah. So why don't we play that clip from Naked Archaeology that got us to doing this research?
The first Naked Archaeologist question is, dear Naked Archaeologist, you seem to like to solve biblical questions with the archaeology. So here is a head scratcher for you. In Genesis 30, it says, Leah went out to meet Jacob and said, I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. Why would someone trade mandrakes for sex? You know, it's a very good question, and you know, one of the big Bible stumpers of all time, but I have a theory about that. It has to do with the Hebrew for mandrakes, dudaim, and the Hittites, who hail from Turkey. So let's go to Istanbul to figure this one out. The Archaeological Museum of Istanbul, oops, sorry, it's a priceless artifact. This is where the greatest Hittite collection exists. Come over here. Look at this. These are Hittite inscriptions. What you have here, incantation against impotence. If a guy has some difficulty with his lady, he should get the saliva from a bull with an erection.
I mean, the bull has to have the erection. The guy has the problem, or he wouldn't be looking for. Anyway, if that's not hard enough, he has to find the saliva of a sheep with an erection. And then he's got to take the saliva of a goat with an erection. He's got to mix all this stuff up together and drink it. If you can't get all that saliva from all these different animals with erections, there is a fallback position. If a man's potency comes to an end in the month of Nisanu, which is April, you catch a male partridge, you pluck its wings, and then you pound it up together with mountain dadunu plant. You give it to him to drink and beer, and then the man will get potency. What does this have to do with the Bible? Let me tell you. In the Bible it says that, Jacob, who becomes Israel, the father of the tribes, he had two wives, Leah and Rachel. Leah, he didn't love her as much as Rachel, but she had lots of kids. Rachel couldn't have kids. And there's one episode in the Bible that says the oldest son of Leah, Reuben, went to the fields and he found dudaim in Hebrew. Dudaim plant, and he brought it to his mother. Now Rachel says, give me that plant. And Leah says, no way. And Rachel says, I'll give you my husband for tonight, give me the plant. Nobody could figure out why would she trade her husband for a plant. The answer is in this Hittite inscription, the Dadunu plant. That's the same as the Dudaim. It's a solution against impotence, but I bet you also against infertility. We actually figure out something in the Bible by coming to this inscription.
No, I just have to seriously ask, how do you get the saliva from an animal with an erect member? How does that happen? How does that animal even let you get close to it to get the saliva?
But notice what the secondary, if you can't do all this, which is almost an impossibility, look at what it is. Taking this dudahim plant
Yep.
and making this potion. And seeing, I think he mentions in the spring, something about in the spring.
harvest, yeah.
But you can see, this is on clay tablets that actually predate the Bible.
And that's the point, friends. This is taken from the very nation, the very society of people, the very culture that Jehovah mandated they get wiped out by Joshua later.
Well, and the point being is, those Hittites and Canaanites, that's why God had to destroy them, because, they were obsessed with sex and doing all this superstition, pagan potions and all of this. Okay, if that is true, then why did Leah and Rachel want these plants to do their own potion?
Right. Or I go back to a previous thought. Or was it ultimately to control a drug trade? I'm just saying,
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Now, I hope you found this as interesting as we did, because, there's a lot more research that we just didn't have time to mention. You can go and do research on this. It's pretty amazing, these ancient, natural cures for these things.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, because when you were looking at all this information, Watchtower really didn't have a whole lot to say on the mandrakes, did they?
Not much.
Now, Watchtower doesn't write much on the subject of mandrakes, so we're just going to share with you what we found. In one of the articles, Watchtower does acknowledge that it's a narcotic. But I found this even more interesting in the light of religious typology. Okay, this comes from the October 1st, 2007 Watchtower on page 11. Speaking of Rachel, the mandrakes did not help. When after 6 years of marriage, Rachel finally did conceive and give birth to Joseph, it was because Jehovah remembered her and answered her prayer. Only then could Rachel say, God has taken away my reproach. Well, from a religious theological perspective, What you have here is another typology of the miracle birth.
Yeah, now what I found was in the 2004 Watchtower Bond volume, January 15th, page 28. Now, this article starts on page 26, and it's Jehovah's Word is Alive. Highlights from the book of Genesis, part 2. Well, when you go over to page 28, at the top of the right-hand column, it has chapter 30, verses 14 and 15. And it says, why did Rachel relinquish an opportunity to conceive in exchange for some mandrakes? In ancient times, the fruit of the mandrake plant was used in medicine as a narcotic and for preventing or relieving spasms.
There it is, narcotic.
The fruit was also credited with the capacity to excite sexual desire
Aphrodisiac.
and to increase human fertility or aid in conception. While the Bible does not reveal Rachel's motive for the exchange, she may have thought that the mandrakes would help her conceive and end her reproach of being barren. However, it was some years before Jehovah opened her womb.
Just a side note, based on what you just read, if the mandrakes are used to help in conception, then why is it when you read the Song of Solomon, you're reading a story, presumably, of two people that are not married yet? Think about that.
Yeah, why would they have
See?
these mandrakes? It said in the entryways, you know, as you walk into the house. You know, if you're trying to remain chaste, like, you know, the Shulamite maiden was, you know, why would you try to incite anybody's, you know, lust by having these plants available?
Well, because obviously there's more going on than Watchtower's willing to explore.
Apparently. But, you know, it also mentions them in the insight of the scriptures, basically the same thing that, you know, we have been saying here. And, you know, there's just not much. Even when you do a search in the Watchtower library for mandrakes, there's just, you know, about that much. Instead of like hundreds of references like most subjects, it's only maybe about an inch and a half long. So.
But when you friends read this, do not overlook that it's also a narcotic. Think about that.
A love potion.
Exactly.
Because then they would have to admit that these people in the royal bloodline of Jesus Christ were doing Hittite and superstitious potions
What
out of
potions?
these plants, out of these aphrodisiac plants.
Which, taking in the proper dosage becomes a narcotic.
An opiate.
An opiate. Come on, people. It's not that difficult to really see what's going on here in ancient times.
Yeah. Now, before we say goodbye, I just wanted to mention that we watched a video last night from Smurf Girl. And I'm going to put the link down below because it's really good. She has a recording from an elder and his wife. Now, it's interesting what this elder and his wife say about this particular situation. And it's surprising because it's almost like, oh, no, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. This is how elders are. They don't want to hear about these pervos that are among them.
Well, when they hear it, it almost makes them obligated to do something about it.
Exactly. You know, and so, you know, Smurf Girl brings out some really good points. Watchtower won't do anything about this. They have that secret database, and they won't protect their own members of their own congregation. So we can't expect them to protect the world. So, you know, she makes some really good points. Now, stay tuned to the end after she, you know, gets done speaking, because she shows some clips about a JW that was on the register the predator register, and here he is out going door to door. And, I agree. Roman did a great job of tracking this guy down and exposing him. And notice in the clip that when they confront this pervo by the van, the whole car group of Jehovah's Witnesses, he says, oh, no, 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 no. Well, then he admits later that, yes, this is true. So he lied.
He lied.
So do you think any of these pervos are going to admit, oh, yeah, I went to prison, for molesting a child? They're not going to admit it.
She makes some very, very good points when she's talking, because some of those pedophiles that are on Watchtower's pedophile database will wake up and they just might think that coming into the ex-Jehovah Witness community that it's a safe haven for them. Make no mistake about it, when you're caught and found out, you will get exposed.
See, and that's why, we've exposed at least one or two that I know of that can remember, because we don't want them in our community. We don't want them preying on innocent people. And unfortunately, so many of us are very trusting in this community.
Yep.
And, like Smurf Girl brings out, Watchtower is responsible because they know. But see, none of us know until it's on the public registry.
Right.
So I recommend go watching it. She did an excellent job, and there's so many, doing great videos. Ugly Watchtower has done some really good ones lately, and our friend Jane Doe, she did one that we watched this morning. It's like, oh my God, Watchtower actually printed this? So great job, all of you, and so many more. And also, unfortunately, we just don't see or mention all of these YouTube channels, but there's a new one. At least looks like a couple of months she started her channel, Rayanne, and I just started crying listening to her latest video. It's XJW Diary Episode 2, Why I Left the JWs, and I just cried along with her, and I just wanted to hug her. It's like, oh, poor sweetie, So I'll put the link down below to her video also. Let's give her some love and support. She's an abuse survivor. And that's the thing, is we want to give love and support to these abuse survivors. And, it's been so sad because in the past year I have seen so many of these abuse survivors attacked on social media.
Yeah.
And it's just heartbreaking that this community is so divided that way, that we can't offer love and support, and then you file a court case against one because you feel threatened by them? Wow. Wow. So instead of, dealing with things internally, now you have to file court cases for a protection order. What, you're going to give me a protection order now just because I'm speaking out against it? Go ahead.
Look
Go
how
ahead.
silly this all is.
It is. It is. This is ridiculous. And so, I agree with Smurf Girl. We're going to keep exposing all of this nonsense.
Yep.
And you can't shut us up. You cannot shut us up. We're going to keep speaking about this and exposing this. So I'm going to put the link down below to these two videos that I was talking about. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and you have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.